Hey, what's up everybody? 3D Theory here. Today is March 10th, 2025 at 7:47 a.m. This is vlog number 75. I thought I'd start this morning with an old school coffee pour. So there's been a lot of things I've been working on. I didn't want to do kind of a structured video of sorts. I just wanted to bring the camera in and show you guys what I've been up to, just like old times with the old vlogs I did. So if you guys joined 3D Theory here when I was doing the daily vlogs, this is kind of a throwback to that, except now you guys are seeing my face, which I wasn't showing back then. So if you guys are new to the channel, this is my tiny 3D print farm of 5 Bambu Lab A1 3D printers. I got the 5th one over here with the AMS, and that there is the 5th one. And usually I print plates and latches, but production on those things are pretty much on pause for right now because we've fulfilled all the orders we needed to. We're waiting for new orders. And in the meantime, I got a couple of little projects going on. So as you guys may or may not know, I print these traditional animation desk pen cups that you can see here as well. And they're basically just the traditional hand-drawn animation desks that used to be used when creating, classic animated films. And I made a little pen cup in the back. So if you could just imagine without the pen cup, that's how they would look. Actually, I just went over and I brought one that doesn't have the pen cup in the back. This is pretty much how they look. You have an animation disc there that rotated. And I have some videos showing the real desk. They have a couple of them at Disney California Adventure in one of their animation shops, and they're really cool, and they kind of are like this nostalgic table where some of the greatest animated films were ever made. I've been using the print farm to print out multiple versions of these because I'm going to be shipping them out. I know I just got one order. I'm pretty much getting one order a week, which is the most orders I've ever gotten for things that I've sold on Etsy. By the way, if you're interested, the link to my Etsy shop is in the description below. By the way, nothing like a nice warm cup of coffee. And yes, I do drink it straight black. Very nice. Now, with that being said, there were some updates to this thing that I've been really wanting to make. One of them is that I want to get this animation disc to rotate. So I have a friend who's been in the animation industry for a very long time, and I decided to gift him one of these. And when he picked it up, the first thing he did was he tried moving the animation disc, and I said it's glued on there. And he still appreciated the gift very much, but just seeing his knee-jerk reaction to immediately going to try to turn it made me go, hey, maybe I should make a version where you can turn it, because these versions are still really cool and they capture the spirit of it and everything. And so I wanted to add that in there, and I also wanted to create a version where I didn't have to glue everything together. So, and when I say I glue everything, I'm referring to these top handles here. I had to glue them in because they're so small, and this desk here is pretty much completely accurate to the dimensions of the actual desk. If you go back to my video where I modeled this thing, which I'll put a link in the description for that video, you'll see that I modeled it from a picture and I captured all the details there. But with that being said, these top drawers here are really small and don't have supporting walls on the top and bottom because they're too small to be 3D printed. I wanted to adjust that as well. Also, I wanted to get these shelves to fit a little better when I'm putting them together, and so I went ahead and I did all those things. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention is some of the tables from back then had this really cool accent on the bottom. It was a leg. It's like a U-shaped leg. And when I saw that, I thought that'd be really cool to add to the next version. I'm still going to be offering this version, but I'm going to be calling it a premium version with this upcoming one here. And this one, you can rotate the animation disc. It's going to be all snap fitted together. No glue is going to be involved in the making of this. We have that bottom accent, which I think is super cool. If you look up traditional animation desk, you'll see that some of them have this bottom leg, and I just think that looks so cool. All right, and down here we have the newest iteration of it. I've probably printed about 4 of these already. As I'm going in and testing tolerances and getting everything to fit right, it was kind of a challenge to make sure everything was to the standard I need it to be. So let's get this off the build plate. As you can tell, I printed it out in gray because I'm limited on how much brown PETG filament I have. By the way, this is all printed in PETG, but it looks very nice, very clean print. And these supports are very easy to remove. You got one in the middle there, and then 2 on the sides. It took a long time to design in 3D, a lot of hard work, a lot of back and forth going from computer to 3D printer, from computer to 3D printer, but I feel like I finally got a model that works right. As you can see, there are holes here for that bottom leg we'll be putting on in just a moment. And let's get these shelves and drawers out of there. There you have it. We got the drawers, the shelves, and we'll put all those on so you guys can take a look and see how it's done. All right, guys, so this is pretty much where I usually build out some stuff. As you can tell, I got a whole bunch of stuff going on over here, which we're going to talk about all that. This is kind of a testing process I went through for anyone who has a Bambu Lab A1 or a bed slinger for that matter, a bed slinger 3D printer. I went ahead and I started to try to figure out a solution to the warped edges that slightly curve up on 3D prints for both PLA and PETG with 4 different kinds of build plates. But we'll get to that in just a moment. I wanted to build this thing out, and this is almost a finished prototype. There's still one kink I need to iron out, and that is the plexiglass. The old plexiglass were very thin. If you look at what I used to use for my plexiglass, they were pretty thin and they worked just fine. And they did what they needed to do, which is make it look like there's plexiglass on here. And they held together perfectly well and they did a good job. However, sometimes printing them so thin, when I would remove them from the print bed, they would bend, and I didn't quite like that. And sometimes that bend would make it hard for it to stick in place within the animation disc here. So with that in mind, I made thicker versions, but with the thicker versions, here's a slightly thicker version. It has good thickness, meaning it sits within the animation disc really well, but it can pop out. So when I say well, I mean it sits flush in there. And then I made a slightly thicker version also, which has good tolerance, but when I stick it in, it stays, but it rises above the table line of the animation disc and it kind of protrudes out just a little bit. So I got to work out the kink with that, giving the tolerance of this one while making it as thick as this one. So it's another little update I got to make, but in the meantime, I'm going to put this thing together and show you what it's like. We got the legs here that I'm just going to pop on the bottom, and there's little posts that we just stick into the holes there. It's very satisfying to get this thing on there. Hey, what do you know? It looks really nice. And it stays up just like that. It kind of gets a little elevated off the ground there. And then we have a little post, and there's a little hole there on the animation table for it to be able to rotate. And I just stick this post in there, just like that there. And then we just stick it through there. And then we have a little cap for the post in the back. And once it's in there, it rotates. Hey, what do you know? That is looking great. And the difference between this one and this one is I had to create a little bit of a thickness so that the post can sit in there. And because of that, the animation disc got really thick. And it usually sits pretty flush or really thinly on top of the slanted table here. So that's what I did with this one. I sunk in the circle here that houses the animation disc on the slanted table and creates a nice thin look for the animation disc, and it rotates. It's so satisfying, but I do got to fix this plexiglass because it falls right out. So there's still some prototyping I still need to do, but we're really close. And I think that's the only thing that's left. Then these bottom shelves was a challenge to get working out so they can sit in there and not move. And here's the middle shelf here. And the goal of these were to just be able to pop them in and have them sit in there without giving me a hard time during installation. And once they're in and they don't go anywhere. And I feel like for some reason this right one is a little loose. And these got a little loose. But on my prototype over here, it's not that way. It's actually snugly in there. So I wonder what changed. Sometimes there's just slight tolerance differences and I don't know why. But nonetheless, it's just another thing I gotta fix. Maybe I can make it 0.025 millimeters thicker. And I've been working with tiny little differences going back and forth like that. I probably have, I don't know, 8 or 10 of these little shelves because I had to print them out so many times. But nonetheless, here are the drawer units. And let me show you the top. The top drawer now has a top and bottom thickness, which in the past it didn't. And I had to glue the handles to be exact. So I'm going to throw in the little handle there. And usually the handles are black, and that's why I print them out separately. And there you go. They sit in there really nice. And from there, I just pop them in. just like that, and I do the rest for the rest of the drawers. So I just popped in that handle there. Now for this pair here, there you go. I just popped that one in, and for this one as well. And these work great. I did notice that when I print out the parts together, sometimes the tolerances change. So with these bottom shelves, I'll print them out separately just to try them out on my test unit over here. So when I printed it out all together, as you saw when I pulled it off the print bed, the tolerance is slightly changed. And that might just be because I'm printing it out all together. And I do remember that when I used to print out with my old Crealities, if I printed too many things out on the print bed, I wouldn't get as exact of a print to what I had in my 3D model. But these Bambu Lab A1 3D printers do a fantastic job. And as you can see, they come out really great, especially with all the other extra stuff I put on the print bed when I print for a print job. So maybe it's just a result of that on a small scale. I just have to adjust it again and make sure that it fits, because I did end up creating a shelf that was way too thick. Well, rather wide for that matter, and it didn't fit. So let me see if this will fit. This is actually 1.5 millimeters wider. And yeah, this one still doesn't fit. So I know that 1.5 millimeters is too thick. And actually the tolerance of this one is 0.025 millimeters wider than the holes I created for the shelf. And still it's this loose. So that's interesting. I'll just maybe make it 0.25 more, and perhaps that'll do the trick. And yeah, this is the new version that's going to be on my Etsy shop pretty soon. I don't know when it's going to be on there just yet, but has the legs on there, has the new animation disc that rotates, as well as no glued parts. This is going to be the premium version, and for anyone who wants to have this little animation disc rotate on their animation table pen cup, we'll be able to get it pretty soon. I'll announce it here. And there are a couple of more ideas that I have related to the animation desk here that are going to come out in the future. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a while, but I'm going to be finishing this one up pretty soon. So we'll have something new on the Etsy shop, because currently I only have this product on there. And like I said, it's the best-selling product I've ever had. I've put products on Etsy and then taken them off, put them on, taken them off. But this has been the best-selling, where I'm getting about 1 or 2 sales a week. And I do want to ramp up some sales and get more units being shipped out of the Etsy shop. But until then, this is what's on there. And can't wait to put this new premium version on there. By the way, for those of you who are waiting on the spring-loaded pillbox to come out, I did create a video on this new version. It was something that you guys chose in the polls to be made. So if you guys missed that video, it's the last one. And this is the spring-loaded pillbox. Hope you guys like it. Please comment down below whether or not you'd want to see this on Makerworld for a design competition, where you guys would take it and then, redesign it in some way and improve upon it. And I do mention ways I'd like to improve upon it myself in the previous video. And then I can 3D print the winner of that competition. So let me know if you guys want to see this up on Makerworld. Just put a lowercase I in quotes in the comments. And that's how I'll know who's interested in seeing this on my Makerworld, which is also linked in the description below. All right, guys, so you must be wondering, what are all these over here? So these here are tests. And what I wanted to do was see if I could figure out a solution to the edges lifting up. This, if you guys remember, was printed on the A1 here in the enclosure, and I still got this lifting edges. And usually this happens when there's cooling happening on the outside, or a cool draft coming through and lifting up the edges. And it makes it kind of like a curve, like a smiley face, if you will, like a hand-drawn smiley face. And you can see here that it's raising as I push down on the right side over here. And so BIQU has sent me their CryoGrip plates. Here is the Frostbite, and I printed this out a few days ago, and I left it on there so you guys can see how well it holds. And this is great for PLA and PETG. And this is not a sponsored video. They just sent me this for review, and it's been fantastic. This thing has a really great finish. It's almost smooth, but slightly grainy. Let me see if I can get a shot of showing off the grain here. There you go. It's like a very light grain, but overall it's pretty smooth, and it creates a really nice finish. And I wanted to show you guys over here how nicely it comes off and what kind of a beautiful bottom finish it gives. It really feels smooth to the touch and it's very nice. This is PLA, by the way. I'm just gonna mark this here, PLA on Frostbite. There you go. And they also sent me this really sweet looking build plate called the CryoGrip Pro Glacier. And as you can tell, this thing just came right off. It wasn't even stuck on there at all. And the bottom finish is extremely smooth. This is a lot smoother than the Frostbite. And this is PLA as well. I'm just gonna write over here PLA on Glacier. It's kind of hard to see, but you see it. And this thing is great for all other materials except PLA and PETG, although as you can see, PLA and PETG do work on this build plate, but this does well with those higher grade materials like ABS and so on and so forth. And so both of these build plates hold prints super duper well. For PLA and PETG, more so the Frostbite down there, which does a fantastic job in gripping. The idea is that these print plates can print out and grip your 3D prints at cooler temperatures. So the build plate doesn't need to heat up as hot to be able to grip it. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, this can be a solution to the edge warp happening with bed slinger 3D printers. And right now, I'll put numbers up as to what the CryoGrip Pro Glacier over here uses for both PETG and PLA, or rather what I used. And then I'll put what I used for the CryoGrip Glacier down there. And just to be fair, I printed some out on textured PEI as well as smooth PEI over here. And I want you to see this. I printed this out a few days ago as well. And this thing is sitting flat on top of here. Now let me loosen this up. This is PETG. This is actually really stuck on there. I didn't think it was going to be that stuck on there. All right. My goodness. I wonder if this ripped the coating off the smooth PEI sheet over here. All right, and as you can see there, that thing was really stuck on there. But this is PETG printed on smooth PEI. All right, guys, so as I was mentioning a moment ago, I did try out a couple of different print settings, and I'm gonna put those different print settings here for both PETG and PLA for the textured PEI sheet, smooth PEI sheet, Glacier CryoGrip, and Frostbite CryoGrip. And you can see them here now. All right, guys, so I jumped into Bambu Studio here really quick, and I wanted to show you the settings that I'm working with for these tests. So we have generic PLA as well as generic PETG, and I don't really change a whole lot except wall loops, sparse infill density, and using triangles for the infill pattern. And for the build plate options, as you can see here, we have cool plate, Bambu cool plate super tack, smooth PEI plate, and textured PEI plate. So when I was using PETG for both BIQU plates, the Frostbite and the Glacier, I would use Bambu cool plate super tack setting, just generic, which is 70 degrees Celsius. Then for the smooth PEI, I'd use the smooth PEI, and then for the textured PEI plate, I'd use textured, meaning 80 degrees Celsius for both of these. So I just kept it real generic. I did experiment with cool plate for the Glacier for PETG, and I raised this to 55 degrees Celsius, but you'll see the result of that coming up. So super tack was my main setting that I was using for PETG for the BIQU plates, and then I just used the corresponding smooth and textured settings for the corresponding build plates. Now for PLA, I was just using, again, generic PLA, and for generic PLA, I was actually using cool plate for the Frostbite BIQU build plate, and then I was using the super tack for the Glacier build plate for PLA. And then likewise, I just used the smooth PEI plate for the smooth build plate, and then textured PEI plate for the textured PEI plate, which was at 65 degrees Celsius. And as you can see, cool plate was definitely lower by 30 degrees Celsius, so it was printing at a lower temperature. And we'll see the results of all that. And I pretty much wrote everything down on the back of these boxes so we can see what the tests were like. So warping typically happens on prints that span the length and width of the build plate on a bed slinger 3D printer. And so I can't speak for CoreXY because I only have bed slingers, but my goal with this test here is to see if I could figure out a solution to having those corners lifting. And so let's see what those results are. And for the sake of clarity, when I'm showing you the results, I'm going to put it on the build plate that it was printed out on for the sake of clarity. So we'll start out with the results of 3 smooth PEI sheet prints for both PETG and PLA. And in this test, I only test out PETG and PLA. Alright guys, so this is PETG on smooth PEI. And as you can see here on this edge, as well as on that edge, there's lifting. So on the smooth PEI, we did get some lifting happening. Alright guys, so after that we did PLA on smooth PEI. And as you can see, there's lifting going on here. And after that, I wanted to do PETG again on the smooth PEI just to double check, because it was a cold night and lo and behold, it was indeed still lifting on the edges on the smooth PEI. So here's that first one we did, and then here's that PLA we did. And after looking at them, actually PLA does seem to be holding up a little bit better on the smooth PEI. Well, we're going to go ahead and compare the best results of which build plate went with which material in the end. So I would say that for the winner between the 3 here, I would say the PLA printed the most flat on the smooth PEI. So I think the PLA on smooth PEI did really well. We'll make this the winner for the smooth PEI test. Next, we'll go with textured PEI and what the results of those were. And as you know, this is the one I printed out in the enclosure when I had that enclosure video. And this is definitely lifting on the edges as well. This is PETG on textured PEI with the enclosure. So you saw the results there. So I did PETG again on textured PEI, and it seems to have a little bit of warping on the edges, but not as bad as the green one. I feel like the green one had more lifting than this red PETG here. So this is doing a lot better than the green one. And now we got PLA on textured PEI. Let's take a look at that. That's looking really good. I wonder if the PLA is doing better in terms of warping than the PETG. And one thing to note is that PETG does have a tendency to warp more when there's cool drafts of air. And I just wanted to make note of that when we're comparing between PLA and PETG. So let's take a look at this one and then the PLA. And again, it looks like the PLA is the winner here. So let's take a look and compare. That's the PLA and that's the PETG. They look like they're both doing pretty good, but maybe the PLA is doing slightly better. So the winner is the PLA for the textured PEI. But for the PETG, I feel like it's definitely doing a little bit better than the green one that I had. All right guys, next up we have the CryoGrip Pro Glacier. And I wanted to try different bed temperatures. So for my first test here, I printed PETG with a bed temperature of 55 degrees Celsius, which is lower than their recommendation, because they give you a little recommendation sheet that I'll put up here right now so you guys can see where you should keep their bed temperatures at. And as you can see here, it lifted really high up, and that was my fault because I put the bed temperature a little too low, and I really wanted to give it a shot and see if maybe lower bed temperatures will create less warping. But since it was not holding on to the build plate, it warped even more. And when I saw that, I stopped the print. For test number 2, I used Super Tack, just standard settings in Bambu Lab, cool plate Super Tack at 70 degrees Celsius bed temperature. And as you can see, there's a little bit of lifting on the edges on this one as well. But honestly, it's not too bad. But again, like the others, the PETG is still tending to warp on the edges. All right, and last we have the PLA on Glacier, and there's a little bit of warping, but not so bad. Overall, the PLA looks like it's doing best, but nonetheless, there's still warping going on. All right, guys, and last we have the BIQU Frostbite build plate, which is great for PLA and PETG, and I'm really the most curious to know what the results for these were, and I haven't personally checked it out until now while I'm doing this video, so I'm getting the results of this as we go along. So first off, we have the Frostbite PETG at 55 degrees Celsius. I used a cool plate, standard settings on Bambu Studio. And here's the PETG. And again, we're getting warping on the edges. But I wanted to give it another try, and I did another Frostbite with a 70 degrees Celsius for this PETG. Let's see. And again, we're getting warping, but honestly, one side seems to be flatter than the other, and I don't know why that is. And as you can see there, nonetheless, there's still some warping, but I do feel like between all the PETGs, this Frostbite at 70 degrees Celsius is doing the best. And last, we did PLA on Frostbite, and Funny enough, this seemed like it had the most warping on the Frostbite. So I think between the two, I would say they seem about equal, but I think the PETG did better on the Frostbite than the PLA, because you got a little bit of more warping on this side than this here. So I would say the winner for the Frostbite is PETG at 70 degrees Celsius. All right, guys, so here's the results. We have for the Frostbite, we have the PETG printed out on cool super tack at 70 degrees Celsius. Then we have the Glacier here with PLA, again, printed out with the generic super tack settings in Bambu Studio. For the textured PEI, we have the PLA printed out in your standard PLA generic settings on Bambu Studio. And for the smooth PEI, we have the generic smooth PEI settings for PLA in Bambu Studio. So these are the winners here. We have PETG and PLA for the rest. And it's kind of hard comparing them because I know that PLA doesn't warp as much as PETG, but you saw that the Frostbite PETG with cool super tack generic settings for both the PETG and the build plate printed out pretty well. So if I were to print out big objects like this that span the length and width of the build plate, I would definitely be using PETG on this Frostbite. And the rest you saw. PLA does great on here, even though this is meant for more engineering grade materials like what you see on the screen right now. And then we have PLA on these that don't warp as much. But nonetheless, the warping wasn't so terrible on the textured and smooth PEI sheets. It's just present. And I felt like this was my best way of addressing it for bed slingers in particular. All right, guys, so I was pretty happy with the results that came out from these tests. If you have any other ideas on how to get those edges to not warp, please comment it down below. Would love to hear your suggestions. I actually got the smooth PEI sheet suggestion from a comment from a previous video, so I decided to give it a try, and you saw the results, and I'm very happy with how they came out. I'll definitely be using the CryoGrip Frostbite build plate for my PETG prints because that was actually a really good result that came out from it. That about wraps it up here in the Tiny 3D Print Farm. 3D Theory here. Until next time, guys, peace, love, and joy.